This is Top Accolade Global News Updates. I am Soy Bifa Jagridge. Taiwan's biggest earthquake in at least 25 years killed 9 people on Wednesday, injuring more than 800 while 50 went missing en route to a national park, authorities said, as rescuers used ladders to bring others to safety. Television broadcast images of buildings at precarious angles in the mountainous, sparsely populated eastern country of Hualien, near the epiccentre of the 7.2 magnitude quake, which struck just offshore at about 8 a.m. It was very strong. It felt as if the house was going to topple, said Hualien, 60, a worker in a hospital in Taipei, the capital. A woman who runs bed and breakfast accommodation in Hualien City said she scrambled to calm her guests who were frightened by the earthquake. "This is the biggest earthquake I have ever experienced," said the woman, who asked to be identified only by her family name Chan. The earthquake hit at a depth of 15.5 kilometers, that is 9.6 miles, just as people were headed for work and school, setting off a tsunami warning for southern Japan and the Philippines that was later lifted. Video showed rescuers using ladders to help topple people out of windows, while elsewhere there were massive landslides. A strong tremors in Taipei forced the subway system to close briefly, although most lines resumed service. Taiwan's Air Force said 16 fighter jets had been slightly damaged at a major base in the city, from which jets are often scrambled to see off incursions by China's Air Force, but the aircraft are expected to return to service very soon. In Japan, the weather agency put the quake's magnitude at 7.7, saying several small tsunami waves reached parts of the southern prefecture of Okinawa, while downgrading its tsunami warning to an advisory. Factory workers at Mercedes-Benz assemble plans in Alabama and moving forward with efforts to join the United Auto Workers UAW, and they plan to file a petition as soon as this week, a union leader said. Earlier on Tuesday, Reuters cited 3 people familiar with the matter, saying employees at the SUV plant in Vance, Alabama plan to file paperwork with the National Labor Relations Board (NLRB) seeking a formal election to join UAW. The date of an actual vote is not yet certain. The union's Region 8 director, Tim Smith, said he had been with UAW President Shawn Fain in Alabama 2 weeks ago, talking to Mercedes workers who were getting ready to petition this week for a union election. A union spokesman declined to discuss a Mercedes vote timeframe, but the Union Auto Workers said in late February that a majority of about 6,000 workers at the plant had signed cards to join the union. The company is pushing back and the politicians are getting involved, Fain said at the North Carolina rally, adding that workers were fed up with getting screwed. Mercedes did not respond immediately to comments by Smith and Fain. Earlier, Mercedes spokesperson said the company had a proven record of competitively compensating team members and providing many additional benefits, and that it preferred to maintain direct communication with employees. Following the United Auto Workers nationwide campaign to increase its membership, Mercedes wants to ensure its team members make an informed decision, the spokesperson said. An OPEC Plus ministerial panel is unlikely to recommend an oil output policy changes at a meeting later, 3 OPEC Plus sources said, following the producer's earlier decision to extend the voluntary oil output cost until June. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and Allies, led by Russia, known as OPEC Plus, is scheduled to hold an outlined Joint Ministerial Monitoring Committee meeting (JMMC) at 11:00 GMT to review the market and members' implementation of output costs. Oil has rallied this year, driven by tighter supply, attacks on Russian energy infrastructure, and war in the Middle East. Brent crude traded above $89 a barrel on Wednesday, up from $77 at the end of 2023. 2 of the 3 sources, who asked not to be named because they were not authorized to speak publicly, said they expected a straightforward meeting. 5 other sources had a similar view. OPEC OPEC Plus members led by Saudi Arabia and Russia last month agreed to extend voluntary output cost of 2.2 million barrels per day until the end of June to support the markets. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak said on Friday, Russia has decided to focus on reducing oil output rather than exports in the second quarter to evenly share production cuts with other OPEC Plus member countries. When the voluntary cut expires at the end of June, the total cost by OPEC Plus are set to decline to 3.66 million PBD as agreed in earlier steps starting in 2022. The JMMC brings together leading OPEC Plus countries, including Saudi Arabia, Russia, and United Arab Emirates. The panel usually meets every 2 months and can make recommendations to change policy that can be discussed and ratified in a full ministerial meeting including all members. Disclosed deepening operating losses for its foundry business, a blow to the chipmaker as it tries to regain a technology lead it lost in recent years in Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing. Intel said the manufacturing unit had $7 billion in operating losses for 2023, a steeper loss than the $5.2 billion in operating losses the year before. The unit had revenue of $18.9 billion for 2023, down 31% from $27.49 billion the year before. Intel shares were down 4.3% after the documents were filed with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC). During a presentation for investors, Chief Executive Pat Gelsinger said 2024 would be the year of worst operating losses for the company's chip-making business and that it expects to break even as an operating basis by about 2027. Gelsinger said the foundry business was weighed down by bad decisions, including 1 year ago against using extreme ultraviolet EUV machines from Dutch firm ASML. While those machines can cost more than $150 million, they are more cost effective than earlier chip making tools. Partially as a result of the missteps, Intel has outsourced about 30% of the total number of wafers to external contract manufacturers such as TSMC. Gelsinger said it aims to bring that number down to roughly 20%. Intel has now switched over to using EUV tools, which will cover and more production needs as all the machines are phased out. Intel plans to spend $100 billion on building or expanding chip factories in 4 US states. Its business turnaround plan depends on persuading outside companies to use its manufacturing services. Covering teams opened the second channel enabling smaller vessels to navigate the port of Baltimore, but most commercial shipping remains blocked by the collapsed bridge and stranded container ship that brought destruction down a week ago. A team, including the U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the state of Maryland, announced crews had cleared a channel with a depth of 14 feet that is 4.3 meters, similar to the 11-foot channel opened on the opposite side of the wreckage on Monday. The main channel has been blocked since the fully loaded container ship Dali lost power and rammed into a support column of the Francis Scott Key Bridge a week ago, killing 6 road workers and causing the highway bridge to tumble into the Patapsco River. The 2 auxiliary channels have enabled access of emergency vessels, tugs, and barges, but officials said they would need to clear bridge debris before opening the main channel, which is 50 feet, that is 15 meters deep. Major cargo ships need a depth of at least 35 feet, Maryland Governor Wiz Murray told a news conference. The port of Baltimore ranked first in the United States for the volume it handles of autos and light trucks, farms and construction machinery, imported sugar and imported gypsum. According to the state of Maryland, some terminal operations outside the affected area have resumed. The bodies of 4 victims remain trapped beneath the wreckage, officials say. Divers recovered 2 other bodies. President Joe Biden visited the site on Friday. The White House said the Biden administration has held secure equipment and initial emergency funding of $60 million to begin recovery. And the president has asked Congress to fund the rebuilding of the bridge, which forms part of a highway looping around Baltimore. That is the size of top accolade global news updates. You can follow us on our social media platforms as displayed on your screen. Happy Wednesday.